Welcome to the In Between podcast. Today I'm chatting with Shannon Russell, a career transition coach, author, and host of the Second Act Success podcast. After 16 years as a TV producer and running her own franchise, she now helps women design fulfilling second acts through entrepreneurship and career change. I am so excited for you to be here, Shannon. Thank you. Our great friend Jessica and Kelly, they connected us, and Jess has been on the podcast before. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Cassidy. I'm so looking forward to this.
Me too. So I want to jump right in because your intro kind of said it all. One, what is a second act? And two, how did you decide to have a second act?
I love that. Yes, I think to me, a second act just means starting over in your life in any way that you choose. So it can mean a career change, starting a business, writing a book, starting a podcast, just doing something else in that maybe second half of your life, or just changing, from one thing to the other to kind of have that new adventure. And for me, it started when I was producing television, my dream job, but then I had my second son and I just realized I was away from the kids so much and I didn't want that anymore. And I decided, well, what else can I do? Can I produce my own life? Can I start a second act and take what I've learned from my first career and bring it into a second? And that's where I got the idea for second acts and wanting to help other people find theirs.
I love that. You're so creative for that name because it totally makes sense. And it's like, it doesn't just invalidate what you just did in your first act, but it's just a new chapter and a new time to try something new.
Yes, I think of it like an adventure. Like for me, I had this aha moment of, okay, I accomplished my dream. Let's celebrate that. Let's check it off and then say, okay, what's next? And then when I reframed that almost grieving period of leaving, or that the feeling of like, who am I? What am I going to do? I started reframing it to say like, this is a new adventure. Like, what else can I do? Let's make this fun because there's so much more life to still live.
Amen. And it's such a good perspective during such a big transition, right? Like I think and you're the expert on this, but I assume that happens for a lot of women when they have children, when they start to have babies and they realize like, oh my gosh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So let's talk about it. You were a TV producer. When did those thoughts kind of come in of like, maybe this isn't, obviously you had your son. When were those thoughts? And was there like a big defining moment that was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. I got to try something else?
Yeah, both. When I had my first son, I was living in Los Angeles. And right when I was on maternity leave with him, I started thinking like, how is this going to work? Because in television, we work really long hours, we travel, like I just wasn't sure. And then we ended up moving back to the East Coast. And so my husband, who's also a producer, we were both working out of Manhattan at that time. And then just a couple years later, I had my second son. And when I was pregnant with him, that's when everything like the wheels really started turning. And I started thinking, I can't miss another dinner in bath time. And I just the commute was so long that I was missing seeing my son. And as I was pregnant with my second one, I just had this moment, and I talk about it in my book, where I was supposed to interview Taylor Swift for this pop culture news show I was working on. And I had this last minute decision of, I don't want to go interview her. Like, I'm going to let my team do it, because if I don't catch the bus in about 30 minutes, I'm not going to get home for, daycare pickup, dinner, bed, the whole thing. And it was in that moment where I realized, okay, I've like done all the fun TV stuff. Now I want to, really be that present mom.
Wow. I mean, some people would have taken the Taylor Swift interview knowing now where we're at.
Years later, I know, I'm like, what would I do now?
But honestly, I don't know many moms who wouldn't have made the choice that you made too, right? To just be home. And those guys are superstars in their own right. And they just wanted to be back with you and you with them. So I think that was the best decision. Thank you. Shortly after that, you begin to obviously make this switch, and you didn't go straight into what you're doing now. Where did you find yourself?
I found myself lost and alone, like just completely
Yep.
confused with this newborn and this 3-year-old. And it took about a year of missteps. I joined a graduate school program and thought, well, I'll be a teacher. Let me start working, taking classes online. And then I realized I don't want to do that. That's not me. And I took a 9 to 5 job thinking, okay, this is the responsible thing. Let me work in this office. And then I realized this is horrible and a toxic environment and I can't do this either. And so I was trying to grasp at straws. And then I just had this epiphany crying in the car one day during my lunch saying, okay, I've got to just produce something for myself. And I had this idea of just starting a business and had no idea what type of business, but I ended up buying into and starting a franchise that taught STEM education to kids because I had these 2 little boys and wanted to be flexible to be with them. And yeah, so a franchise business that taught STEM education was my leap into entrepreneurship. And it led me, I ran the business for 8 years with my kids by my side and sold the business successfully last year.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I think that's so cool that you're like a lot of failures, a lot of trials, just trying to figure it out. I think
Yeah.
so, like, we're shifting out of this culture where I think, like, at least my grandparents, right? Like, they were in a career their whole lives, right? And it's 30, 40, 50 years in one job. And we're really having this shift. I mean, especially with Gen Z, I feel like a lot of them have new careers yearly, right? Where we're allowing ourselves to try different things. And I think it's so cool to be, at what age were you when this happened?
I was 38, I think,
Okay.
around, yeah.
So, I mean, mid 30s, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's so great that we can tell college kids now, like, you don't need to know what you want to do, but we could also say that in mid 30s, right? Like, we can
Yes.
always be redefining ourselves and reevaluating those dreams. And like you said, you achieved that dream. You did the TV producer life. You loved it, but now the dreams were shifting. And I just think that's so cool that one, that you gave yourself permission, but you also noticed a gap in there, right? Because you noticed that one, it was hard for you, and two, maybe people needed support during this transition.
Yeah, because, and I want to always be honest that in between, like you say, is messy, yet you can learn so much about yourself if you're willing to, go inward and have that conversation with yourself. And so often we're just hustle, hustle that it's in those moments where you just check in and say, are you okay? Does your life align? And for me, it didn't with television and being a new mom. And so that in between taught me a lot. And then as I was finding success in the business, taking my producing skills and producing quote unquote this business and finding success in the first couple of years, and I said, wow, like there's something to this. And I started having customers ask me because they were my age with young kids who were coming to the classes I was teaching. And they would say, oh, what grade did you teach? And I would say, no, I'm a television producer. And it would spark this conversation where they'd say, well, can you help me? I'm really not happy where I am, or my career is not aligned. Can you help me? And I started coaching my customers. And it just organically led to me starting Second Act Success, my coaching business, and just saying, you know what? I was alone and lost. Let me see if I can help other women like me make that transition, where it's not as scary and lonely so they can save themselves some stress and tears.
Yeah. What do you think is, or I mean, personally, and what comes up with your clients, like, what is the scariest part? Is it making that decision? Is it quitting your job? Is it figuring out what the next step is?
I think, at least for me, it was really just figuring out what that was and what was going to fulfill me. I think a lot of my clients fear what others are going to say, and they fear that drastic change and kind of the who am I to rock the boat, especially if you are a parent and you have other people depending on you, or maybe you're a caregiver to your parents. Like, we have other responsibilities. And then to say, well, I'm going to give up what's stable and shake things up and try this new, venture into this business, or, move in this new direction. Like, who am I to do that? And so it's just kind of taking that thought and appreciating it and saying, well, you know what? Who are you not to try? let's figure it out in a strategic way where you're not causing chaos, but you're actually working towards your goal in a way that doesn't, shake things up too badly. But yeah, I think it's that fear of that change and the unknown, and then what people think. People know you as what you've done for so long, and then to switch and say, oh no, now I'm doing this, you just worry about what others are going to think about that.
I imagine there's so much imposter syndrome in there too, right? I mean, having a career for 16 years and then deciding one day, like, I'm a business owner now, I do this now. It takes confidence and it takes trusting yourself. And it also takes admitting, like, hey, I don't know everything about this profession like I did my last, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to try it. And I think, like, as a mom, that has to be so great for your kids to have seen you try something new, fail, pick up, try again. That is what we're teaching our kids to do, and don't really have many chances in adulthood to admit those things. And so I think, imposter syndrome, having to work through that too, alongside the people pleasing, is probably tough.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I look at it now, even because I feel like I'm starting different acts and I'm showing my kids, because they don't really remember, me as a television producer. So, my 3-year-old doesn't remember the days that I was late to pick him up at daycare, so they only know me as this kind of business owner mom who's been home with them. But then, when I sold the business just a year ago and, really went full time into my coaching, they saw that. And then I said, oh, I'm going to write a book. And they saw me writing the book. And so I feel like they're proud of me, and they get to see that, like you said earlier, like, you don't have to have the same career your entire lives, like, both of my parents did, or your grandparents. And now it's really like, choose what you want to do and keep all those other ideas there too, because you can most likely do all of them at some point. And so, yeah, I think it's a good lesson to teach the kids, and then to also feel like it's okay to be confident in your decision. For me, I was really confident in what I was venturing into, because being that present mom outweighed like what I was doing in my career. And so when friends and even family were worried about me and, why are you leaving this well-paying, exciting job? I was just like, nope, you know what? I did it. I accomplished it. I'm cool. Like, trust me on this. And that just took a lot of like self-awareness, but it helped me to kind of like close out those comments and just kind of say, okay, I'm going to stick to my path and let's see where this goes. And worst comes to worst, Cassidy, you can go back, right? Those skills stay with you. And I always say, if Oprah called tomorrow, I'd go back to TV, like, there's just, it all stays with you. So it's not that scary when you think about it that way.
It does. And a conversation I have with myself all the time, because I went through a transition. I was in the fitness world, and then I started my social media management business, and now I have the podcast. And some days, business owner days, where you're just like, I don't know if this is going to work, or how am I going to get my next client, or what's going to happen. And I'm like, I'm farther than I ever thought I would be, right? Like, I just need to keep going and keep trying. And sometimes I think, like, especially in where I'm at, all my degree, all my credibility, right, was in fitness. And now I started this career, and I went to YouTube University, and I learned everything I could. And I discredit myself, and I'm like, oh, well, I couldn't even get a full-time job because I don't have this and that. And I'm like, well, the things I've learned as a business owner far surpass probably some of the things that I would have learned if I went back and got my degree in this, right? So it's all about having those conversations with yourself of like, not discrediting what you've created in the midst of figuring it out and having your second act.
Yeah, and it all comes with you. Like, you're using so much of what you learned and did in fitness in different ways in your business now. So I think it does grow with you. And it's going to, it's always, being in business for yourself, I think, is always an uphill battle. And there's, it's never, oh, great, I succeeded and I'm here. It's like, no, there's always something. Like, there's always struggles. And I think as long as you have the hustle,
go to the next thing.
Yeah. And, you are hustling, because it's like, you and I don't get paid if we don't have clients. And so we're always working towards that and keeping things moving. But there's something really fun and like almost like a sense of pride that we can get when, things do go our way because we're doing it all of ourselves as a solopreneur. And, there's something to be proud of in that. And I think for anyone who's thinking about going out on their own, like there is that sense of pride and that creativity and creating something for yourself. I feel like there's nothing like that, that sense of, wow, I did it.
Yeah. And all that hard work and all those dreams that you fulfilled, like it's just the best feeling in the world. So I want to switch focus to our listeners. Maybe someone's listening to this and they are feeling stuck. We'll use the word stuck of like, okay, a second act, that kind of sounds fun, but like, where do I even start? What is that first touch point of something, maybe a conversation within themselves they could entertain to really see if this is the next thing that they're supposed to be going for?
Yeah, I think the first thing is going back to that conversation, like having a moment, even if it's just 2 minutes in the shower, to just ask yourself, like, hey, how am I doing? Okay? Am I happy right now with my situation? And it can be anything from work to relationships to health, whatever it is. Like, just make sure that you're in a place where you're happy. And if you're feeling stuck, what is it that feels stuck? What doesn't feel aligned? And as you start thinking about that, like start thinking about what else you could do. If it is career related, or maybe you have a goal, something that you're passionate about, maybe you want to volunteer more, whatever this second act or something else that you want to incorporate into your world, start thinking about what it is that you already know how to do. So list out your skills of what you already do, like from what you did in fitness or what I did in television production. Like we have skills, we have experience. So if you're thinking about starting a business or writing a book or starting a new job, write down everything that you currently know how to do, circle the things that you love to do, and cross out the things that you no longer want to do. And then start thinking about, okay, I have this business idea. How does that relate to what I already know how to do? And just start doing your research. Like researching a book or a business is free. It's just a way of researching, figuring out, learning more about what the day-to-day is. And the more you learn, the more you can say, oh, that does sound like a great second act. Or, you know what, maybe that isn't what I want to do. But until you give yourself that time to kind of look inwards, see how you're feeling, and seeing what that potential second act is, you won't really know. But once you can just start researching what else you would like to do at this stage in life, and then you can start figuring out how to make it happen. But I think that inner conversation is important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think the immersion of it is important too. Like you mentioned, doing the research, maybe if you're going to be a fitness instructor, right? Like taking different fitness instructor classes to decide what studio, or all those different things are so crucial to figuring it out, because you can do a million things or think you want to do a million things. And then you go sit, in a doctor's office and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a doctor, or whatever it is. So I think totally, you have to have that conversation with yourself and allow it to be evolving. Because even in your situation, right, like you went into one path and all of a sudden something else came to you and you were doing both.
Yeah. And then it helps you decide. So I went, okay, I definitely don't want to be in the classroom teaching, or I don't want to have this 9 to 5 office job. And I can cross it off and say, okay, what is next? And you probably went through some of that in your transition as well. It's just figuring out what fits and what lights you up, so you want to wake up every day to do it.
Yeah. Well, and you just brought up a good point that I was thinking definitely when I transitioned to careers, was the lifestyle. And I think that's becoming such a bigger conversation, especially in kids like in college, right? Is now we don't have to have this like 9 to 5, I go in, I go out. That's not the only option. And for me with fitness, it was so flexible in when I could take my clients, what time I got done. I really made that schedule myself. And going to a new career, I was like, I have to be virtual, or I have to have some flexibility in it. I did not want to go to an office. And so then starting my business, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be virtual. I'm going to have these boundaries so that I can have more flexibility. And I think that's such a great point also with motherhood, is what is the lifestyle that you see yourself in? And what career also flows with that? Because you could love the career, but if it interferes with the lifestyle you really want, like your first act, right? Like they were clashing.
Yes. And so it goes, I always say to my clients, think about your why. Why do you want to leave where you are to start this new thing? And for me, as an example, it was being present for the kids so that I could pick them up from school and just be there and not miss out. Like I missed my first son's first birthday, and that still haunts me all these years later. So, that was my why. And so when I was thinking about what else I wanted to do, and your listeners can do this too, is know what your why is of really what you want your lifestyle to be like, or what your one goal is in starting the second act. And then every time an opportunity comes up or an idea, see how it aligns. Because, as I was looking at potentially teaching or this 9 to 5 job, different things, I said, oh, it's just not aligning with my why or exactly how I see the second act looking. And same with you, probably. It's just like, okay, I want to be virtual. I want to have this flexibility. So I'm not going to take a social media management job at an advertising agency or at a corporation because that won't be as flexible. So I think for your listeners, know your why and let that kind of guide you to where you end up going, because I think that won't steer you wrong, right? That comes from your heart and your soul and what you want to do.
I love that. Did you have any difficulties defining success when you made that transition? Obviously, in TV production, I'm sure there's ratings and numbers and things like that you were looking towards. Did you struggle at all with the sense of, okay, well, I'm a failure?
I had a lot of self-doubt when I first started, a lot. And there was actually a moment where I ran back to TV for a weekend because I was like, okay, like I got a job offer for like a quick little shoot for Fashion Week. And I'm like, let me go do that because that's comfortable and safe. And starting this new business isn't. And so what I had to learn is that my type A kind of being in charge on the studio set was not happening in starting a brand new business, because there were so many things to learn and I was a newbie and I was just really trying to figure it out. And I slowly learned that it wasn't going to be an overnight success. And I think the second that I realized that, and I just said, okay, like I'm going to dip into savings, we're going to make this work. And it took probably 18 months or so until I finally was in a groove. And then shortly after that, I won an award for one of the top earning franchisees in my organization. And that's when I said, okay, I didn't need that, but I needed that in a sense to just let me take that breath and say, okay, I am on the right path. This is working. Yes, it took longer than I thought, but I'm on the right path and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And that was the main thing. But yeah, just that it's never going to be just overnight that you step from this one role into this same level. It's not parallel.
Yeah, you're a beginner once again, so you have to
Yeah.
learn those different things and I think define success along the way. Like, okay, our doors opened, we got a new client, or however you have to define those rules for yourself. But I could see, I mean, in myself, I had some sort of sense of a feeling of failure. I don't think I really resonated with it, but it was there because it's like, I'm starting over. I'm at ground zero. Like I have nothing to prove myself, especially in the beginning when, you don't have clients to prove what you're doing works and all of those things. And so it can be hard to make that transition.
Yeah, it's kind of the fake it till you make it, but you don't want to say that. You're just really just trying to say, okay, it's not going to happen all at once, but I'm going to find that success in little things. Like you said, okay, my door's open. I've got the first, client, or someone emailed me back. They actually want to talk to me, or, just little things like that. And then to say at the end of the day, like, this is my path and every day is going to be different and I'm just going to keep working towards it. But again, just knowing I'm still that person too that I was, and it's there for me if I need to go back. But I think, yeah, it's just, you have to be up for the challenge. I think that's what it is in entrepreneurship, especially, is just saying, okay, because you can have it all planned out, but then something goes out the window and you just have to be willing to like roll with it.
You really do have to build such a sense of resilience because you're going to be knocked down a lot. In your case, obviously you went from the security of a 9 to 5 in your industry to more of a business owner, entrepreneur, flexible schedule. And I would assume that's a lot of your clients nowadays that are transitioning, but I'm sure there's a few who are just transitioning to different careers or trying to go to school for something. What advice do you give those people who are really leaving such a secure paycheck, insurance, all these different things that as a business owner, right? Like, we don't always have the luxury of paying ourselves first. We don't always have the luxury of, oh, I need insurance. I mean, you really go from the luxury of that security to nothing until you can build it up. And what advice do you offer those kinds of people?
Well, I have two clients right now who are actively like have the date on the calendar and they're working towards giving their notice and fully starting, being 100% into their business. So what we're doing is working on that plan because I think if you do have that security in that job, then you're in a great place to start building your business while you're earning that paycheck. I think that's a really great place to be. I didn't have that. I kind of leapt once I had my second son and just like figured it out. But I think if you have that paycheck, okay, start doing things like find 30 minutes once a week or, 15 minutes during your lunch break every day to do some research on your business and start setting things up. And there's so many things you can do while you're still working, like setting up your LLC or doing your market research or your logo and branding, like, setting up your social media handles, like little things like that you can just start doing, checking off your list. So eventually 3, 6 months later, however long it is, you feel like you've got the business bones set up. And as long as you're saving during that time too, you can feel secure in taking that leap, or you continue to build on the side and actually, kind of prove that, you have customers and clients that are willing to pay for your services or products. And then you'll feel more confident. But it doesn't have to be, I'm quitting tomorrow and I'm going to figure it out. Like you can start slow and small and work towards that goal. And that date, that, quitting 2 weeks notice date can move. It's just something to work towards, I think.
Yeah. And there are people who you're probably, you may be listening to this and you're a risky person and you're like, I have to jump full in. And that is totally great. I personally am not like that. I am someone who needs strategy. I was in that position because my transition was during COVID. So luckily I was with some family and I got to have that tradition with support. But I think it's so important what you're saying of being able to make those steps small. And even if it's like, hey, I'm going to move from a full-time job to a part-time job. So now I have a little bit more wiggle room, but I still have some security. I think the biggest thing that you can do is truly give yourself the time and the space to try to start it before you do jump in and make sure it's something that you love and you're going to put the time into. And again, market research is great. And I love market research from a standpoint of like, not only just researching for your brand and what other people are doing, but like asking those who've already done what you're doing, how did you do this? What did you learn? And I mean, most people will say yes. I got coffee with so many different social media people in my first year where I would literally cry to them and be like, how do you do this? And I would learn things and I would apply it. And then, I mean, eventually it did get a little bit easier. And I think that's the importance of having someone like you who comes in and is alongside of you, and you don't have to do it alone, and you get to navigate that with someone, one, who's done it, but also a professional who can help you on the mindset work. So can you share a little bit about your role when someone's going through their second act, how you support them?
Absolutely. Yeah. I work with women who kind of have that idea for their business or even need their business idea validated. And I help them get it come, to life, if you will, and have it out there in the public. And then I work with clients who just need to help scale their new business. So kind of that whole transition. And it's really fun to be that supportive handheld person because a lot of people don't have support from their partner or their family, or they think, oh, you're, kind of being wild and crazy about this. And I'm that person who says, okay, it's doable and we can be strategic and let's make this plan. And I've done it all in a sense. Like I had a brick and mortar, I have an online business, I had a mobile-based business, a service business. So I feel like I've had my toe in all different industries. So it's nice to be able to come with that experience and let my clients know, okay, well, here's what you can do setting up this type of business, or here's what I'd recommend to get that extra training that you might need. And so it's just nice to kind of hold their hand and again, keep them accountable because it's so easy to just say, oh, this is too hard. Let me just go back to where it's safe and cozy. But I really like to get their goals, work on, okay, what's the timeline? Let's make that roadmap and let's get there together.
I love that. Have you ever read the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying?
Yes. I have. And
Bonnie
it's
something, I think.
Bonnie Ware.
That, yes, that book was so eye-opening when I read it because of how many people either chose security or chose to stay where they were at for other people. So maybe their job was the breadwinning job in the family and they knew it would make everyone secure. And if they removed it, it wouldn't be. And so they chose to never chase the dream. And I think it's one of my favorite culture shifts that's happening right now is this energy of like, no, you need to chase this dream. Even if it doesn't look how you were intending it to look, you need to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just got chills. I completely agree with you, Cassidy, because it's so true. I think that's what second act to me is really starting something that you've always dreamed about or that you think will make your life better and not having regrets at the end of the day for not having tried it. And it can be like, I wrote a book just because I'd always wanted to, and that was something I can check off my list because I didn't want to regret that at the end of the day. So if there's anything that, your listeners are thinking about, like find a way to make it happen because you don't want to have that regret of living your life for other people. And there's ways of going and working towards your goals in that strategic way, like we talked about earlier, where you're not, making, chaos in your family, but you're working towards a goal so that you can accomplish it. Yeah, that book
And I mean, the purpose behind it, right? Like you writing your book, obviously there was a greater mission attached to what you're currently doing and the work that you're doing with your clients, but it was also just as simple as like, this is something I've always wanted to do. And it's not about sales and it's not about this and it's not about that. And obviously on a grander scheme, of course, those things come into play, but the bottom line is I wanted to do this. And so I did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was very cool, like, because my kids are now 10 and 13, so I wrote the book about a year and a half ago. They were old enough to understand that I was working towards this. So it would be like once a week I was taking a class where I would close the door and write for 90 minutes. And it was cool for them to see me have that dedication and work towards that goal and then be there when the book was out in stores and available online. Like was cool, I think, for them to see that, oh, you really can attain this goal. And like you said, like, it's not about the money. You don't write a book to get rich by any means, but I wanted to share my message and accomplish something that I always wanted to do. So yeah, I think anyone who's listening can do that as well. It's a lot easier to attain any type of goal with just those little steps to get you there.
What kind of advice do you give your kids? You've kind of got preteens into teenagers now. They're probably going to start thinking about what they want to do or if they want to attend college and all of those things. What kind of advice do you lead with as a person who's gone through a lot of these transitions and played and had a lot of fun careers?
I tell them that they can do it all. Like I have my 13-year-old is extremely bright, and so he is thinking about medicine, but then he's also in theater and loves acting. So I'm always like, okay, well, you can do both. Or you know what, you can be a doctor who does community theater. Like you can choose whichever path or start one and then continue to make a switch and do something later. So I'm not harping on like, what do you want to be when you get older? Because I think you and I can change 10 more times if we want to before we're really retired. So I think, yeah, I try to let them know that, it's endless really, and that there's always something that they can do. So it's not very black and white anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. I think the way that you have those conversations now expands their worldviews and expands what they think is capable. And if they're one, you're telling them that they're believing it, and two, they're seeing it in you, they're not going to see all the roadblocks of like, oh, well, financially, it might be scary to make this choice, or I might need to do this way because it feels more safe. And even if that's naturally their personality, I would assume it's inherently giving them more of a risky view of life of I can really do anything and I'm going to bootstrap it and I'm going to figure it out.
And another thing too is the idea that I always say that they have to be an entrepreneur of some caliber. Like, because I think that's the only way, and I think moving forward, especially the way the world is now, that's the only way to have some kind of control over your finances and your life is to have something that you built and that you control yourself. So even if they have this amazing corporate job and they're this, fancy lawyer at this big corporation, I want them to still have an Etsy shop Or like something on the side, a consulting gig, something where they can control, because that fancy corporate job is never guaranteed to anyone. And so I think that's an important lesson that we're all learning as the world changes, that, to have something that you built yourself, you can be proud, you can control the money that comes in, you can be creative. I think it's just a win-win, and it can be something super small, but it's just something that is yours.
It teaches you so, so much. Even if, you have that security, it's still teaching you how to interact with people, how to get clients, how you would do things differently. If you're using the corporate lawyer for an example, maybe they have certain protocols and strategies with their clients, and you take a couple consulting clients, and you change it up and do it differently. And you would have never got that opportunity if you were stuck in the corporate world.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so many ways to be creative in what we do. And I think that's what's exciting, even with like having the podcast and just finding different ways to get your message out into the world and show your creativity and what you can do.
Yeah. I was just on Jessica's podcast, and we were talking about that too. And I was saying, for me, my roadblock when we started podcasting was like, I do not want to look at editing ever in my life. And so for me, I was luckily blessed in my business to be able to afford to have someone and outsource the editing and not have to think about that. And it's really become something Jessica loves to do. And she loves to sit and edit her and Kelly's podcast. And I just thought it was so funny because every single person has their things that they enjoy and that they love, right? And like for me, I love having good interviews. I think this is like part of my week where I just feel fueled, and I do it selfishly because I'm like, I'm going to learn so much from this guest. And then great, I get to have someone else edit it and share it with the world. But it's really selfish, right? It's something for me that I, one, am good at, but two, I love doing. And I love getting to spend this time to learn and to grow. And I think everything goes back to your why and your purpose. And that's really the focus. And so, I mean, would you agree that if someone if they're thinking, okay, what's the first step I take? Would it be establishing that purpose, that why?
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think it's just, again, going back, just having that little bit of a conversation with yourself to figure out what that is. And then that can be your compass or your arrow to lead you to whatever's next. And you might have no idea what that is. And that's the fun of just following your why to figure that out.
It's so interesting that you come on the podcast, because I think the last like 2 or 3 guests, we've had this same conversation, but in different context. I interviewed the CEO of Ronald McDonald House, Las Vegas, and totally had no idea she was a news anchor for years, like 20 years or something. And she was like, I just knew I didn't love it anymore. My kids could see it in me. She quit, and she ended up doing an MC gig at a charity. And she was like, wait, what if I work for a nonprofit? Like, completely never thought in her life that she would end up in the nonprofit space. And her story has really stuck with me, because I'm like, she just took that one action. She had quit her job that day. Literally 2 days later, she had this gig lined up she had to go do, and it was with a nonprofit. And that's where it clicked for her of like, oh my gosh, wait, I actually think this is a better role for me. And so it's so inspiring and interesting to see that this is not something that's rare anymore. This is something that every single person is experiencing, either in real time or they've already gone through it.
And if you keep your eyes open too, like she was open to whatever that next step was. And I think that's important, because opportunities are flying our way all the time, but you have to be open to the universe and to just looking around you to see what those are. Because you never know, especially when you're in that in between again, to like figure it out. Like you never know. You just want to be open to the possibility.
Yeah. And I mean, for her, she's like, I took an entry basic level role. I lost money taking that job, right? But she was like, I loved it. I loved it so much. She's like, I had no idea I would work my way up and become CEO of a nonprofit, right? So it's just one of those things of like, she was more passionate. She was more focused on how it made her feel. And for her, she was in a place where taking that money cut wasn't that big of a deal. And now she's worked her way up and she's in an executive C-level role. And so it's just so cool to see that people are really taking this to heart, and they're not just sitting and regretting everything that they've spent so hard to work. Because your first act has so many benefits, and it has served its purpose, and it might just be time for something new.
Yeah. And look what she's getting to put out into the world with that organization. That's so wonderful that she
Yeah.
would never have had a chance to do. That's so exciting.
Yes. No, her name is Allison, so you have to check out her episode. She's incredible. She'll be a couple before this. But I would love for you to share your podcast and your book, because if you are listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I need a second act, I feel like that would be an incredible place to start to just introduce yourself to the conversation. You tell me about your podcast.
Yeah, it's called the Second Act Success. So it really is women like you, Cassidy, I have to have you on to talk about their transitions and their second act. So it's really, I want listeners to hear other people who have made that transition so they can say, ooh, if she can do it, I can do it. And so, yeah, I'm a little over.
Incredible way to like motivate yourself to go into the second act.
Exactly.
Surround yourself with the stories.
Yeah, I think it's so great. And I do little solo episodes here and there on different topics. But yeah, I just want it to be a kind of a place where you can go and get inspired about what you can do next for yourself.
And then the book is live.
Yeah, the book is called Start Your Second Act as well. So yeah, that book came out in May. So it's really just kind of a thank you. It's so exciting. And it's all about like just creating that second act for yourself. And really, we talk about entrepreneurship, volunteering, nonprofits, just ways to start thinking and then taking that action to actually start your second act. So yeah, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and everywhere.
Perfect. Well, we will link all those up. So if you're interested in connecting with Shannon, and then can they just go to your website if they'd like to inquire about coaching?
Absolutely. Yep. It's secondactsuccess.co.
Okay, perfect. And what are your socials?
Second Act Success on Instagram, and I hang out a lot on LinkedIn as well, and that's Shannon Russell Coach.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. This was so fun to get to talk to you. And thank you so much for joining us on the In Between podcast.